It was a bright, sunny Saturday afternoon. The kind of day that makes you want to run outside and play. In a small, quiet neighborhood, everything seemed perfect. Birds were chirping happy little songs in the trees. Kids were laughing and chasing each other down the street. The air smelled like fresh grass and summer. It was peaceful, well, almost peaceful. Because in this neighborhood there was one guy, one drone, and one very grumpy lady. And things were about to get wild. Let me tell you about Jake. Jake was just a regular guy. Not super tall, not super short, not loud, not quiet, just Jake. He had messy brown hair and a big smile that showed up whenever he was having fun. And what made Jake happiest? Flying his drone. Now this wasn't some big fancy machine with lights and lasers. Nope, it was a simple little drone, a cool toy he got for his birthday. It had a tiny camera on it, and Jake loved sending it up into the sky to take pictures and videos. He'd watch it zoom over the trees and houses, capturing awesome views of the world below. To Jake, it was like being a bird, soaring high and free. Most people in the neighborhood didn't mind Jake's drone. The kids thought it was cool. "Whoa, look at that," they'd yell, pointing as it buzzed overhead. The grown-ups didn't care much either. They'd wave at Jake and go back to watering their flowers or sipping lemonade on their porches. It was no big deal, just a guy and his toy having a good time. But there was one person who didn't like it, not even a little bit, and her name was Karen. Now Karen wasn't just any Karen. Oh no, she was the HOA Karen. What's that, you ask? HOA stands for Homeowners Association. It's a group of people who make rules for the neighborhood, like how tall your grass can be or what color your mailbox should be. And Karen, she was the boss of those rules, or at least she acted like she was. She was the kind of lady who'd walk around with a ruler, measuring everyone's lawns. If your grass was half an inch too long, she'd knock on your door and say, "This is a crime, fix it." If your dog barked once, she'd write you a note saying, "Control that beast." Karen loved rules, and she loved telling people what to do even more. She lived right next door to Jake. Her house was perfect. The grass was always short. The flowers were always neat. Her mailbox was shiny and painted bright white. But Karen, she wasn't shiny or bright. She was grumpy. All the time, her face looked like she'd just bitten into a sour lemon. Her hair was pulled back so tight it made her eyebrows go up. And her eyes, they were always squinting, like she was looking for trouble. If you said hi to her, she'd just huff and turn away. Nobody liked messing with Karen. She was like a storm cloud on a sunny day, dark, loud, and ready to ruin everything. Jake didn't think much about Karen at first. She was just the cranky lady next door. He'd see her glaring at him from her porch sometimes, her arms crossed, her lips pressed into a thin line. He'd wave and say, "Hey, Karen," just to be nice. But she'd never wave back. She'd just stare like he was some kind of bug she wanted to squish. Jake didn't let it bother him. He figured she was mad at the world, not just him. Besides, he had his drone to keep him happy. What could she do about that? But here's the thing, Jake didn't know something, and Karen didn't know something either. This sunny Saturday wasn't going to stay sunny and calm. Nope, it was about to turn upside down like a roller coaster dropping fast. Something big was coming, something crazy, and it all started with that little drone buzzing up in the air. Can you guess what's about to happen? Don't worry, I won't tell you yet. Let's keep going and find out together. Picture this, Jake was out in his backyard, standing on the soft green grass. The sun was warm on his face and a light breeze was blowing through the trees. He held the drone's controller in his hands, his thumbs moving the little sticks to make the drone fly. Up it went, lifting off like a tiny helicopter. It climbed higher and higher, the buzzing sound getting softer as it soared into the sky. Jake watched it on the little screen attached to his controller. The camera showed everything: the tops of the trees, the red roofs of the houses, even a bird flying by. Cool, Jake said to himself, grinning. This was his favorite thing to do. Just him, his drone, and the big blue sky. The neighborhood stretched out below. It was a cozy place. Small houses with big yards, a playground at the end of the street with swings and a slide, a little pond where ducks swam in circles. Everyone knew each other here. It was the kind of place where people said hi and stopped to chat. Well, everyone except Karen. She didn't chat, she didn't say hi. She just watched, like a hawk waiting to swoop down on something. And today, that something was Jake. Jake didn't see her at first. He was too busy flying. The drone zipped over his house, then over the street. It passed the playground, where kids were kicking a ball around. They waved at it, laughing. Jake waved back, even though they couldn't see him. He sent the drone higher, catching a view of the whole neighborhood. It was awesome. The sun sparkled on the pond. The trees swayed in the wind. Everything looked so peaceful from up there. But peace doesn't last forever, does it? Not when Karen's around. Back on the ground, Jake's yard was quiet. His house was small but nice, with blue paint and a little porch. His drone was his only big toy and he took good care of it. He'd saved up his allowance for months to buy it. To him, it wasn't just a gadget, it was an adventure, a way to see the world from a new angle. He didn't hurt anyone with it. He didn't break any rules. He just flew it and had fun. What was wrong with that? Nothing, right? Well, try telling that to Karen. Karen's house was right next to Jake's. There was a wooden fence between them, painted brown and a little wobbly. On Jake's side, the yard was messy in a fun way, some toys scattered around, a soccer ball by the back door. On Karen's side, everything was perfect, too perfect. Her grass looked like it was cut with scissors. Her bushes were shaped like little boxes. Even her trash cans were lined up straight. It was like a robot lived there, not a person. And maybe that's how Karen liked it. Everything in order, everything under control. But Jake's drone, that wasn't something she could control. And that made her mad, really mad. Jake kept flying, moving the drone in big circles. He didn't know it yet, but Karen was watching. She'd been on her porch sipping tea from a fancy cup when she heard the buzz. Her head snapped up, her eyes narrowed. She set the cup down, clink, and stood up fast. "What's that noise?" she muttered to herself. She stepped off the porch, her flip-flops slapping the ground. She walked to the edge of her yard, right up to the fence. And there it was, Jake's drone, buzzing in the sky like a big annoying bee. Karen's face turned pink, then red, her hands balled into fists. She didn't like noise, she didn't like toys, and she really didn't like Jake flying that thing near her house. To her, it wasn't just a drone, it was trouble, it was a problem, it was something she had to stop. She didn't know who Jake really was, she didn't know what he could do. All she saw was a kid with a toy, and she was ready to make a big fuss about it. Jake, though, he was clueless. He was just having fun, lost in his little world of flying. The drone dipped low, then shot back up. He laughed as it did a loop. "Sweet," he said. The screen showed the neighborhood spinning for a second before it straightened out. He didn't hear Karen's flip-flops. He didn't see her glaring. He didn't know she was about to flip everything upside down, but she was, oh, she was. This day wasn't going to stay quiet. Something big was brewing, like a storm rolling in slow and sneaky. Jake didn't see it coming, Karen didn't see it coming, but it was there waiting to explode. And it all started with that little drone buzzing away high above the houses. What's going to happen next? How Karen going to mess things up? And what's Jake hiding that she doesn't know about? Stick with me because this story's just getting started. It was still that sunny Saturday afternoon and Jake was having the best time ever. He stood in his backyard, the soft grass tickling his sneakers. The sun was shining bright, making everything look golden. In his hands, he held the controller for his drone. It was his favorite thing, a little flying toy with a camera that showed him the world from way up high. He pressed the buttons and up it went whir, zooming into the sky like a tiny rocket. The drone flew over the tall green trees, buzzing happily. On the little screen in Jake's hands, he could see everything. The red roofs of the houses, the kids playing down the street, even the fluffy white clouds above. Jake grinned big. He was in his happy place, totally lost in the fun of flying. The drone zipped this way and that, catching a super cool view of the neighborhood. Jake loved how it made him feel like an explorer or a pilot, seeing things nobody else could. He tilted the controller and the drone swooped low over his backyard, then shot back up high. Awesome, he said to himself, his eyes glued to the screen. The wind blew gently through his messy brown hair and he didn't have a single worry in the world. Everything was perfect. Well, almost perfect. Because right then, bam, trouble showed up, and it wasn't quiet trouble. It was loud, angry, flip-flop-wearing trouble named Karen. Out of nowhere, Karen burst out of her house next door. She didn't walk, she stormed. Like a tornado spinning fast and wild, she came charging across her perfect yard. Her flip-flops slapped the ground slap, 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 and her face was redder than a fire truck. In her hand, she held her phone, gripping it tight like it was a weapon. Her eyes locked onto Jake's drone, still buzzing in the sky. She stopped at the wobbly brown fence between their yards and pointed up at it with a shaky finger. "That thing's illegal," she screeched, her voice so loud it made the birds stop chirping. "I'm calling 911 right now. You're spying on me, you little creep." Jake blinked. He looked up from his screen, surprised. The drone kept flying, but he turned his head to see Karen standing there, yelling her head off. Her hair was pulled back tight and her mouth was open wide, shouting words like they were bullets. "Lady," Jake said, keeping his voice calm, "it's just a drone. I'm not spying on anyone." He didn't get why she was so mad. It was just a toy. He wasn't hurting anybody. He wasn't even looking at her house. But Karen. She didn't care what Jake said. She wasn't listening, not even a little bit. She waved her phone in the air like a flag. "Oh, you're in big trouble now," she yelled. "I'm telling the police. This is a dangerous intruder. It's a privacy invasion." She started pressing buttons on her phone, her fingers moving fast. Jake could hear her talking into it, her voice sharp and loud. "Hello 911. Yes, there's a boy next door with a drone. He's flying it over my house. He's spying. You need to come quick." She kept going, making it sound like Jake was some kind of bad guy with a giant evil machine. But it was just a little drone, buzzing around like a happy bee. Jake shook his head. He couldn't believe it. Calling 911 over a drone, that was silly. He looked back at his screen and kept flying. The drone looped over the trees again, showing him a view of the playground down the street. Kids were still kicking a ball around, not caring about Karen's big fuss. Jake wasn't scared. He knew he wasn't breaking any rules. He'd read all about drones, where they could fly, how high they could go. He was doing everything right. So why was Karen acting like he'd done something awful? He didn't get it, but he didn't stop flying either. He just shrugged and said to himself, "Let her yell, it's not my problem." But Karen, oh, she was sure she'd won already. She stood there by the fence, her arms crossed, a big smirk on her face. She thought the police would come running, grab Jake, and take him away. In her mind, she was the hero of the neighborhood, stopping a crime with her quick phone call. She glared at Jake, her eyes squinting hard. "You're done for," she said, her voice dripping with mean glee. "Just wait till they get here, you'll see." She tapped her flip-flop on the ground, like she was counting the seconds until Jake got in trouble. Jake didn't say anything back. He just kept flying his drone, moving it in little circles. The buzzing sound filled the air, soft and steady. He wasn't worried, not one bit. Why should he be? He hadn't done anything wrong, but Karen's yelling was starting to get annoying. It was like a loud radio you couldn't turn off. The neighbors were noticing too. Across the street, old Mr. Thompson peeked out his window, his gray head poking past the curtains. Down the block, Mrs. Lopez stepped onto her porch, holding a glass of lemonade, watching the show. Even the kids at the playground stopped kicking their ball for a second to look over. Everyone could hear Karen. She was making a scene, and she didn't care who saw. The drone flew higher, catching a view of Karen's house now. Jake didn't mean to fly over it, he was just turning it around. But there it was on his screen, her perfect yard, her neat bushes, her shiny white mailbox. He tilted the controller to move the drone away quick. He didn't want to give her more to yell about, but Karen saw it. Her eyes got huge. "See," she shouted, pointing again. "You're doing it right now, spying, I caught you." She held up her phone like it was proof, even though the call to 911 was already done. "The police are going to lock you up," she said, her voice so loud it echoed off the houses. Jake rolled his eyes. "Karen, chill out," he said. "I'm not spying, it's just flying over the trees." But she wasn't chilling out, not even close. She stomped her foot, thud, and kept talking into her phone, even though the person on the other end had probably hung up by now. "He's still doing it," she cried. "Hurry up, this is an emergency." Jake almost laughed. An emergency? Over a drone? He thought she was being ridiculous, but he didn't say that out loud. He just kept flying, letting her yell all she wanted. The tension was building, though. You could feel it in the air, like when a storm about to hit. Karen was mad, really mad. Her face was all scrunched up and her hands were shaking as she pointed at the sky. She thought she had Jake trapped. She thought she was in charge. And Jake, he looked calm on the outside, but inside, he was starting to wonder. Why was she so sure she'd win? What did she think the police would do? He wasn't scared, but he didn't like how loud she was getting. It was messing up his fun day. The drone buzzed on, climbing higher. Jake watched the screen, trying to ignore her. The view was still cool, the pond with the ducks, the swings at the playground, the big oak tree by the corner. He didn't want to let Karen ruin it, but she kept going. "You're a little troublemaker," she shouted. "I've had enough of you and that stupid toy." She leaned over the fence now, her flip-flops sinking into her perfect grass. She was so close, Jake could see the sweat on her forehead. She was worked up big time. Jake took a step back, still holding his controller. "Karen, it's not a big deal," he said, trying one more time to calm her down, but it was like talking to a wall. She didn't hear him, she didn't want to, she was too busy being mad, too busy thinking she was right. She turned away from him and started packing by the fence, muttering to herself, "Wait till they get here, wait till they see, he's done." Her flip-flops slapped louder with every step. The neighborhood wasn't so quiet anymore. Karen's voice had chased away the peace. The birds were gone, the kids were staring, the grown-ups were whispering, and Jake, he just kept flying his drone, acting like nothing was wrong, but something was wrong. Trouble was coming, bigger trouble than Karen knew. She thought she had it all figured out, but she didn't, not even close. There was something she didn't see, something hiding right under her nose. What was it? How was this going to turn out? You'll find out soon, because this story, about to get even crazier. The sunny Saturday afternoon wasn't so calm anymore. Jake's little drone kept buzzing in the sky, its tiny motor making a soft whirring sound. Karen, the grumpy HOA lady next door, kept yelling loud enough to scare the squirrels out of the trees. Her flip-flops slapped the ground as she paced by the fence, her face red and sweaty. "You're in big trouble," she hollered over and over like a broken record. Jake stood in his backyard, holding the drone's controller, trying to ignore her. But it was hard, really hard. Her voice was like a siren blasting through the quiet neighborhood. The drone zipped around a little more, showing Jake the world on his screen. He could see the trees, the houses, even a dog chasing its tail down the street. It was still fun, but Karen's shouting was starting to ruin it. Neighbors were noticing now. Across the street, old Mr. Thompson pulled his curtains back, his wrinkly face peeking out. Down the block, Mrs. Lopez stood on her porch, sipping lemonade and squinting at the commotion. Even the kids at the playground stopped running around and turned to watch. "What's going on?" one of them whispered. Nobody knew except that Karen was mad and Jake was the reason. Jake sighed. He didn't want all this drama. He just wanted to fly his drone and have a good day, so he decided to land it. Better to stop the fuss, he thought. He moved his thumbs on the controller, nice and careful. The drone started coming down slowly, gently, like a leaf floating to the ground. It buzzed softer as it got closer. Jake watched the screen, guiding it right into his backyard. The little legs on the drone touched the grass, tap, and it stopped. Perfect landing. Jake smiled a little. "There," he said to himself, "no more trouble." But trouble wasn't done with Jake. Oh no, Karen wasn't done either. She saw the drone land, but that didn't calm her down, not even a tiny bit. She marched right up to the wobbly brown fence between their yards, her flip-flops kicking up bits of her perfect grass. She waved her arms like a crazy person, flapping them up and down like she was trying to fly herself. "You think you're so smart," she shouted, her voice sharp and mean. "You're going to jail for this. The cops are on their way, and I've got proof." Jake looked up from his drone, surprised again. Karen was leaning over the fence now, holding her phone out like it was a prize. She shook it at him, showing blurry pictures she'd taken of the drone in the sky. The pics were fuzzy, little gray blobs against the blue. You could barely tell it was a drone, but Karen acted like they were gold. "See this," she yelled. "This is evidence. You're spying on me and the police will know it." Her eyes were wide and her smirk was big. She thought she had Jake caught, like a mouse in a trap. Jake blinked at her, then laughed, not a big laugh, just a little chuckle. "Good luck with that," he said, calm as could be. He bent down to pick up his drone, brushing some grass off its legs. Karen's yelling didn't scare him, not one bit. He stood back up, holding the drone in his hands, and looked at her. She was still waving her phone, still shouting about jail and proof. But Jake, he wasn't worried. He didn't even look nervous. His face was relaxed, his shoulders loose. Why? Because Jake had a secret, a little something up his sleeve that Karen didn't know about. Something that was going to turn this whole day upside down and make her jaw drop to the ground. Karen didn't notice how calm Jake was. She was too busy being loud. "You'll see," she said, stomping her foot thud on her side of the fence. "When the cops get here, you're done." She turned around and paced back and forth, muttering to herself. "Little creep thinks he can spy on me, not in my neighborhood." Her flip-flops slapped harder with every step. She was like a volcano, ready to blow up. And Jake, he just watched her, holding his drone, a tiny smile on his face. The neighbors kept peeking. Mr. Thompson's curtains twitched again. Mrs. Lopez took another sip of lemonade, her eyes glued to Karen. Down the street, a couple walking their dog stopped to stare. Even the kids at the playground crept closer, whispering to each other. "Is she really calling the police?" one asked. "Over a drone," said another. They giggled, but they didn't leave. Everyone wanted to see what would happen next. The air felt thick, like something big was building. And it was. Jake set his drone down on the grass and leaned against his back porch. He crossed his arms, watching Karen march around like a soldier. She kept talking, even though nobody was answering her. "I've lived here 20 years, she shouted. "Nobody messes with me, nobody flies junk over my house." She pointed at the sky, then at Jake, then at her phone. She was a whirlwind of noise and anger, but Jake didn't argue. He didn't yell back. He just stood there, cool and quiet, like he knew something she didn't. And he did. That's the thing. Jake wasn't just some kid with a toy. There was more to him, something Karen couldn't guess. Every time she shouted, "Jail," or "proof," Jake's little smile got a tiny bit bigger, not because he was mean, but because he knew she was wrong, so wrong. The drone wasn't the whole story. There was a piece missing, a piece Karen didn't see coming, and it was getting closer, step by step, minute by minute. Karen stopped packing for a second and glared at Jake. "Why are you smiling?" she snapped. "You think this is funny, you won't be laughing soon." She held up her phone again, shaking it like it was a magic wand. "These pictures are going to end you." Jake shrugged. "They're blurry," he said simply. "Nobody can tell what that is." Karen's face went even redder. "They'll know," she screeched. "The cops will figure it out. You're a sneak and I caught you." Jake didn't say anything back. He picked up his drone again, turning it over in his hands. He checked the camera, wiped a smudge off the lens. He acted like Karen wasn't even there, but she was louder than ever. She started packing again, her flip-flops making a rhythm, slap, slap, slap. "Just wait," she muttered. "Just wait till they get here." She looked down the street, her eyes searching for flashing lights. She was sure the police were coming fast, ready to back her up. The neighborhood was buzzing now, not with the drone but with whispers. Mr. Thompson stepped out onto his porch, his old slippers shuffling. "What's all this noise?" he grumbled, loud enough for Jake to hear. Mrs. Lopez called over. "Karen, is everything okay?" Karen spun around. "No, it's not okay," she shouted back. "This boy's breaking the law." Mrs. Lopez raised an eyebrow but didn't say more. The kids at the playground edged closer, hiding behind a tree to watch. One of them whispered, "She's so mad." Another giggled, "He's not even scared." And he was. Jake wasn't scared at all. He put his drone back on the grass and sat down next to it. He stretched out his legs, leaning back on his hands like he was relaxing at a picnic. Karen saw him and stopped dead in her tracks. "What are you doing?" she yelled. "You think you can just sit there? You're in trouble." Jake looked up at her, his eyes twinkling a little. "I'm just waiting," he said, "same as you." That made Karen pause. "Waiting," she said, her voice sharp. "Waiting for what?" Jake didn't answer. He just looked at her, that tiny smile still on his face. And that's when Karen started to wonder, why wasn't he mad? Why wasn't he arguing? Why was he so calm? She squinted at him, her brain spinning. But she didn't figure it out. She couldn't, not yet. The secret was still hidden, tucked away like a surprise in a box, and it was a good one. The day stretched on. The sun was still high, the breeze still soft, but the quiet was gone. Karen's yelling had changed everything. The neighbors kept watching, the kids kept whispering, and Jake kept sitting there, cool as a cucumber. Something was coming, something big. Karen thought it was the police ready to take Jake away, but she didn't know the whole story. She didn't know what Jake knew, and that little secret. It was about to shake things up in a way she'd never expect. What was Jake hiding? Why wasn't he worried? And what was going to happen when the cops finally showed up? The tension was growing, like a balloon getting bigger and bigger. It wouldn't pop yet, but it was close, really close. Stick around, because this is where things start to get wild. The sunny Saturday afternoon was getting loud now. Sirens started wailing in the distance, wee-oo, wee-oo, cutting through the air like a big alarm. Karen, the grumpy HOA lady, stopped yelling for a second. Her ears perked up and a huge smirk spread across her face. She crossed her arms tight, standing by the fence between her yard and Jake. "See," she said, her voice full of glee. "They're coming for you." She pointed at Jake, her finger shaking a little like she'd just won a giant prize at the fair. She thought she had him. She thought the police were about to swoop in and take Jake away. Oh, she was so sure. Jake didn't move. He just leaned against the wobbly brown fence in his backyard, cool as a cucumber. His drone sat on the grass next to him, quiet now. He didn't look scared. He didn't look mad. He just shrugged like it was no big deal. "Okay," he said, his voice soft and calm. Karen's smirk got even bigger. She tapped her flip-flop on the ground, tap, 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 waiting for her big win. The sirens got louder, closer. The neighbors peeked out more, Mr. Thompson on his porch, Mrs. Lopez by her door, the kids hiding behind a tree. Everyone wanted to see what was about to happen. Then it did. A police car rolled up the street, its red and blue lights flashing bright. It stopped right in front of Jake's house, tires crunching on the road. The sirens turned off, wee-oo, silence. Two officers stepped out. One was tall with a shiny badge. The other was shorter, holding a little notebook. They looked around, their eyes scanning the yards. Karen didn't wait. She practically ran to them, her flip-flops slapping fast, slap, slap, slap. She waved her arms like a windmill, pointing back at Jake. "That's him," she shouted, her voice loud and squeaky. "He's the one with the drone. Arrest him." The officers turned toward Jake. They started walking over, their boots thumping on the ground. Karen followed close behind, bouncing a little with every step. Her grin was huge now, stretching from ear to ear. She held up her phone, showing those blurry drone pictures again. I've got proof, she said. He's spying, he's breaking the law. She was so excited, she could barely stand still. In her mind, it was over. Jake was done for. The cops were here and she'd won. But then bam, something wild happened. The tall officer stopped in front of Jake and looked at him. His serious face softened. He nodded like they were old pals. "Hey Jake," he said, his voice friendly. "Everything good here?" Karen froze. Her arms dropped. Her mouth fell open a little. Jake smiled back, easy and relaxed. "Yeah, all good, Mike," he said. "Just flying my drone." The officer Mike chuckled, a little laugh that made his badge bounce. "Cool," he said. "We were already in the area. Thought we'd check it out." Karen's eyes went wide, bigger than dinner plates. "Wait, what?" she stammered, her voice cracking. She took a step back, her flip-flops slipping on the grass. She looked at Mike, then at Jake, then back at Mike. "You know him," she squeaked, so loud it sounded like a mouse getting stepped on. Her face started turning red, redder than a ripe tomato. Her hands shook and her phone almost fell. She couldn't believe it. The cops weren't mad at Jake. They weren't arresting him. They were talking to him like friends. Here's the big twist, the huge surprise Karen never saw coming. Jake wasn't just some random kid with a drone. Nope, he was buddies with half the police department. Why? Because Jake was special. He used his drone to help them out all the time. He'd fly it high to film search missions when people got lost. He'd spot lost pets like that fluffy cat stuck in a tree last month. He even helped catch a thief once, zooming his drone over the streets to show the cops where the bad guy was hiding. Now, Jake wasn't a troublemaker, he was a helper, a hero even, and the police, they liked him a lot. Karen didn't know any of this, not a clue. She thought Jake was just a pesky kid with a noisy toy. She thought her 911 call would get him in big trouble, but she was wrong, so wrong. The cops weren't here for Jake, they were here because of her. That's right, her loud, silly call about a dangerous intruder had brought them out, and they weren't happy about it, not one bit. Mike, the tall cop, turned to Karen, his friendly smile faded. "Ma'am," he said, his voice a little stern now, "what's this about?" Karen blinked fast, trying to find words. He's spying," she said, pointing at Jake again. "That drone, it's illegal." She waved her phone, but her blurry pictures didn't look so great anymore. Mike glanced at them and shook his head. "That's not proof," he said, "and drones aren't illegal if they're flown right. Jake knows the rules." Karen's jaw dropped. It hit the ground. Well, not really, but it looked like it might. But I called you," she said, her voice wobbly. "He's a problem." The shorter cop, the one with the notebook, stepped up. "Ma'am," he said, "you called 911. That's for emergencies. A drone isn't an emergency." Karen's face went from red to purple. She sputtered, but she didn't know what to say. Her big plan was falling apart. Now Jake just stood there leaning on the fence, his little smile back. He didn't need to say much. The cops had his back. Mike looked at him again. "You're good, Jake," he said. "Keep up the flying. It's helped us out before." Jake nodded. "Thanks, Mike," he said. The cops turned to leave, but not before Mike gave Karen a look that said, "You messed up." Karen stood there, frozen like a statue. Her arms hung limp. Her phone dangled in her hand. The neighbors watched, whispering. Mr. Thompson chuckled from his porch. Mrs. Lopez hid a smile behind her lemonade glass. The kids by the tree giggled loud. Karen's big win, it was gone. Poof, Jake wasn't in trouble. She was. And that twist, that huge, awesome twist, was the best part of the day. The police car's lights flashed once more as the officers walked back to it. Karen's smirk was long gone. She didn't know Jake was a helper. She didn't know the cops liked him. She thought she'd caught a bad guy, but all she'd done was make a fool of herself. And Jake, he stayed cool because he knew the truth all along. What a surprise, right? What a wild, crazy turn. The sunny Saturday afternoon was winding down, but the excitement wasn't over yet. The police car sat in front of Jake's house, its lights flashing red and blue. The two officers, Mike and the shorter one with the notebook, stood in the yard looking at Karen. She was still by the fence, her flip-flops planted in her perfect grass, her face purple with shock. The big twist had just hit her like a bucket of cold water, and she didn't know what to do. The shorter cop turned to Karen, his eyebrows scrunched into a frown. "Ma'am," he said, his voice serious but not loud, "you can't just call 911 over a drone. That's not an emergency. You're wasting our time." He crossed his arms, holding his little notebook tight. Karen's eyes got big and she started to sputter. But he's breaking the rules," she said, pointing at Jake again. Her hand shook a little and her voice sounded wobbly, like she wasn't so sure anymore. Mike, the tall cop, shook his head. "We've checked," he said, calm and clear. "He's not breaking any rules. Jake knows how to fly his drone the right way." He glanced at Jake, who was still leaning against the fence, holding his drone with a tiny smile. Then Mike looked back at Karen, his eyes narrowing just a bit. "You, though," he said, "false reports can get you a fine." He didn't yell, but his words hit hard. A fine, that meant money. Karen could get in trouble for calling the police when she didn't need to. Karen's mouth flapped open, then shut, then open again, like a fish gulping for air. She didn't know what to say. Her big plan had crumbled. She thought the cops would take Jake away, but now they were telling her she was wrong. Her face went from purple to white and her hands dropped to her sides. The phone with her blurry pictures slipped a little in her fingers. She looked around, noticing the neighbors watching. Mr. Thompson stood on his porch, his arms crossed, a little grin on his wrinkly face. Mrs. Lopez sipped her lemonade, her eyes twinkling like she was enjoying the show. The kids down the street peeked from behind a tree, giggling softly. Everyone could see it. Karen's big fuss had turned into a big flop. Jake didn't say much. He just waved at the cops, his hand swinging easy in the air. "Thanks, guys," he called, his voice happy and light. Mike waved back, a quick flick of his hand. "See you, Jake," he said. The shorter cop nodded too, and they turned to walk back to their car. Their boots crunched on the grass, then the pavement. The police car's lights flashed one more time as they climbed in. The engine started, vroom, and they drove off, leaving a puff of dust behind. They were gone, just like that. Karen stood there, all alone now. Her flip-flops looked silly stuck in the grass, her arms hung limp and her head drooped a little. She was humiliated, super embarrassed in front of everyone. She muttered under her breath words nobody could hear. "Stupid drone, stupid kid," she grumbled, kicking at the ground. For once she didn't have anything loud to say. No shouting, no pointing, no smirking. She'd lost, and she knew it. Slowly, she turned around and slunk back to her house. Her flip-flops dragged slap, slap, slap slower than before. She climbed her porch steps, opened her perfect white door, and disappeared inside. The door shut with a quiet click. Karen was gone. Jake watched her go, then looked down at his drone. He picked it up off the grass, brushing some dirt off its little legs. He grinned, a big, happy grin that showed his teeth. The neighborhood was his again. The birds started chirping like they'd been waiting for Karen to leave. The kids down the street ran back to their game, kicking a ball and laughing. Mr. Thompson shuffled back inside, still smiling. Mrs. Lopez gave Jake a little wave before heading into her house, too. Everything was calm again, better than calm. It was awesome. Jake held his drone close, feeling proud. He hadn't done anything wrong, and now everyone knew it. Karen had tried to make him look bad, but it didn't work. The cops had his back. The neighbors saw the truth. And Karen, she'd think twice before messing with him again. Oh yeah, she'd think real hard next time. No more yelling about his drone. No more fake emergencies. She learned her lesson the hard way, and Jake didn't even have to fight. He just stayed cool, and it all worked out. He walked over to his porch and sat down on the steps. The sun was still warm, the sky still blue. He set the drone next to him and stretched out his legs. What a day, he said to himself, chuckling. He thought about Karen's face, how it went from smirky to shocked to quiet. It was funny now looking back. She'd been so loud, so sure, and then bam, nothing. Jake liked that. It felt good, not mean good, but fair good. Like when the good guy wins in a story. So that's the story. A nosy Karen, a buzzing drone, and a big surprise she didn't expect. Pretty cool, right? Sometimes the people you think are weak or easy to boss around turn out to be super strong. They've got secrets like Jake with his drone tricks that win the day. And the loud ones like Karen who yell and point, they often mess up and fall flat. Has anyone ever thought you couldn't do something but you proved them wrong? Tell me in the comments. If you liked this, hit the like button. See you next time for more fun stories.